everyone, how are we doing today? I'm out here at a place called River West Open Space Area along the San Joaquin River in Fresno County, and it is loud right now. There's red-winged blackbirds calling from like every direction, so that's probably what you're hearing in the background. I'm here today just because I have exciting news. I got a Panasonic S1R recently, and my wildlife telephoto lens is coming in for it this weekend, which means that I'm going to be done using the Panasonic G9 for my wildlife photography, at least for a while, and see how I like it with the new system that I got. However, I wanted to do a review on this thing because there's so many people out there that tell you that Micro Four Thirds is not a good option, specifically for wildlife photography. And I just want to show to you guys that it is a viable option. It is completely doable. You can get amazing photos out of Micro Four Thirds cameras, especially this Panasonic G9, which is what I want to be reviewing today. And also at the same time, be honest with you guys, tell you its limitations, because obviously there is a difference when you're spending money on a $1,700 camera versus a $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 camera. There is a difference. You can't deny that. It's just within your budget range, you can still do amazing things if all you have is $2,000 to spare or even less. So I just wanted to talk to you guys about that today, about the Panasonic G9 and some of its features, some of what it's really good at, some of what it's not so good at, and how I use it, and some of the results I've gotten out of it. That way I can show you guys firsthand that this thing is a viable option. First, I want to talk about some of the pros of using this Panasonic G9, some of what it's good at. So in wildlife photography, things get expensive. To get a good, proper lens for wildlife photography, you can spend thousands upon thousands of dollars. Just to give you guys an idea, some of the top of the line stuff, like an 800mm Canon lens, 5.6 f-stop is $13,000, somewhere around there. You can get even more expensive than that when you get into like the BBC Earth level stuff, but you can get really expensive lenses, and even for full frame on the cheaper end of things, you're spending at least $1,000 to $2,000 to $3,000. And then obviously when you're upgrading the body, it's going to be a lot more expensive as well. The reason for that is Micro Four Thirds system is just all compacted. There's downsides to that obviously, but it really helps if you're trying to save money. And you can still get amazing photos. If you don't believe me, check out any photo I've taken up to this point, and it has been taken with a Micro Four Thirds camera. So if you follow me, you like what you see, it is very possible to do everything I do on a Micro Four Thirds system. Just to give you an example, this body costs $1,700. The new body I'm getting for the Panasonic S1R, that's a full frame mirrorless that I'm upgrading to, is $3,700 or it's $3,800, somewhere around there. Lens that I currently have attached to this one cost me $600, a little bit under $600. That's ridiculous. And if you're wondering about the reach on it, it's a 100 to 300mm lens, which full frame is equivalent to 200 to 600mm. So really, for that price, you can't get a much better lens than that. So with this lens and with this body, I have 600mm of reach for a total of less than $2,500. That is really good. And if you're really passionate about wildlife photography and you just can't spend money on a full frame, I cannot recommend enough buying the G9 and the 100 to 300mm lens. So another really cool thing about the Panasonic G9 is for wildlife photography, obviously you're shooting raw, and it can shoot 20 frames a second in RAW, which is really cool. That's, I think, what I believe to be the highest in the field. And because it has a little bit of a smaller megapixel size than a huge full frame camera, it's able to do that. And just to give you guys kind of like an idea of how that sounds. So if I'm gonna click this, it goes pretty fast. So I capture everything when I'm out in the field in my burst mode. And that's mechanical shutter, 20 frames a second. There's an electronic shutter that shoots 60 frames a second. I hate electronic shutter. It's horrible for wildlife photography. Do not recommend it. So don't even worry about that stat, but the 20 frames per second mechanical shutter is absolutely incredible. Another really cool thing about the Panasonic G9 is you have dual in-body image stabilization. So that dual IBIS is some of the best in the field. If you combine a native lens with that has the Power OIS on it, and you combine the Panasonic G9 camera body, you can get 6.5 stops of image stabilization. It's insane. So this camera, I can very comfortably take out to the field with my wildlife lens and shoot it handheld, and I'm never worrying about shutter blur because of my hand motion, which is just awesome and incredible and really nice to have. And lastly, with this Panasonic G9, Something that's just awesome about the Micro Four Thirds system is how light it is and how incredibly small and compact it is. This thing, I can so easily sling this thing around, take it with me everywhere I go. I do all these videos with it. It's very easy for me to carry on my vlogging camera as well as this thing in one hand. Now to talk with you guys about some of the cons of the kind of the Micro Four Thirds system and the G9, more specifically. One thing that's going to be really obvious is you have 20 megapixel sensor on here. Now, I want to say this very lightly because 20 megapixels is more than enough for almost any situation that you're shooting in if that's your export. What I mean by that is if you export a 20 megapixel picture, you're going to be able to blow it up most likely bigger than you're ever going to want or ever going to need. The way that 20 megapixels can hurt you is in wildlife photography, sometimes you capture a bird, right? And you capture it either in a crop that you don't quite want, or maybe you want to get a little bit closer up on that bird to get the right effect, and you can't do that much with the 20 megapixel sensor. With the 20 megapixel sensor, I'm hesitant to crop my photos. I usually keep my photos the exact way that I shot them. I don't crop them at all. If I do, very slightly, because once you get much lower than 20 megapixels, you're starting to get into dangerous range. Lower than 16 megapixels, you might as well, kind of not even talk about it. So 20 megapixels is enough to do what you need to do, but it's not as nice, for example, as with the S1R. I was doing comparison shots with this the other day, the same focal ranges, and I could take my S1R, because 48 megapixel sensor, I can take that and double the zoom length on the shot, so just crop it down, double as much, and it's still the 20 megapixels that I get on this G9. Another downside of this camera is you have low light. In low light situations, this camera is amazing for the Micro Four Thirds system. I have not found a better camera for the Micro Four Thirds system in photography for how well this thing shoots in low light. Video, it's just as matched as the GH5, not quite as good as the GH5S, but it's right up there as well. So for the Micro Four Thirds system, you cannot get better than this low light wise. However, comparing that to full frame, it's just not even a comparison to those new full frame cameras. And the reason for that is, again, the sensor size is just so much bigger. So you really can't compare this small sensor size to that when it comes to low light competition. So just so you guys are aware, I am only comfortable shooting this cleanly up to $1,600, or sorry, not $1,600, 1,600 ISO. I don't even touch 3,200 ISO. If I'm touching 3,200 ISO, it has to be in literally the most extreme situations where I cannot use 1,600 ISO. I would rather get 1,600 ISO with a little bit of motion blur on this camera than get 3,200 ISO. That's how bad the 3,200 ISO is. 800 ISO is what I really like to shoot at on this when I'm doing wildlife photography. And the last thing I wanted to talk about with this camera is the autofocus. Panasonic. I love the Panasonic system. Panasonic system is my favorite, hands down. I've used some other types of cameras, Canon, Nikon. Panasonic just makes sense to me. And also, I think they are incredibly focused on the consumer, which I like. Canon, especially Canon, sometimes I feel like it's just in a cloud where they expect everyone to conform to them and they have a bunch of blind sheep followers that are just following. And not that Canon doesn't make good products, they make good products, but they're gonna charge you out the butt for them. They're not very oriented to what their consumers are wanting. They're not listening to them as much. Panasonic listens to their consumers, and I really like that. They add what the Panasonic users want to see. And I love Panasonic. I love them as a company. I love how intuitive their cameras are. However, the one thing that they're notably bad for, and I will affirm, is their autofocus sucks. They need to work on their autofocus. Their DFD focus-based system is just not that great. It's doable when you're shooting in broad daylight. It's worked decently well for me, but as soon as you have something that's backlit, it just doesn't really work. So that is something to be aware of. However, I do want to say this as well. Autofocus is good. All these auto settings, can be useful, but I shoot everything manual. Manual is such an important thing, and I'm going to get into that in a different video, but I think it's just so crucial for you to be able to shoot manual. And another thing I think is so crucial is to be able to edit your photos from scratch. If you can't do those things, you're never going to truly learn how to become a good photographer, I believe. But when it comes to autofocus, I'll use autofocus if I can, but I'm always checking it with with your manual focus anyways, because so many times you can do an autofocus and it's not going to be perfectly in sync. And so you need to use that manual focus to just get that eye intact, for example, that it might miss otherwise. So just to give a little bit of a recap, Panasonic G9 is an amazing camera. I can't recommend it enough to wildlife photographers who are on a budget. If you are in the Panasonic Micro Four Thirds system or Olympus Micro Four Thirds system already, I can't stress enough that you can take professional wildlife photos with this stuff. I've sold some of my prints. I do this professionally beyond just wildlife photography, all in the Micro Four Thirds system. For those of you who don't know, I own my own business, German App Creative, in which I shoot music videos, short films, weddings, and I do this all in the Micro Four Thirds system, photography and videography wise. So the Micro Four Thirds system is definitely doable, and I encourage you to keep pushing and keep stretching your limits with that. More than anything, what matters is you and your creative side and what you can accomplish with your camera rather than the camera and the lens itself. Of course, the camera and the lens helps your photography or your videography, but it does not define it. And for those of you who are wanting to get into wildlife photography, I can't recommend any other system more. The Panasonic G9 would be my #1 recommendation right now because it's been out for quite a while. I think it sells for like $1,300 or something like that. So if you take that, you take a $600 lens like what I have, and you have the possibility of taking some really great shots. So for you that are getting into wildlife photography, I can't recommend this system enough, the Panasonic G9 enough. Something that I don't think enough people understand is that your camera and your lens don't make your photography or videography good by itself. They aren't the defining factor of good photography. There's so many people that I know who have great camera bodies or great camera lenses that are worth probably more than the lenses I have for wildlife photography, but don't take as good of photos because they don't know how to capture a photo well. They don't know the steps that are required to capture a photo well, to capture a subject well, and they don't know how to creatively do it. For example, I can't tell you how many times I go down south every Christmas because I have family down south, and I'll go out birding out in those areas, and everyone down south in Southern California thinks they're a wildlife photographer, and they stand around like this with their tripods all day, one location on a lake, shooting straight down into the water. That's gonna get you horrible shots. It will get you shots that show you the bird, but it's not gonna get you any type of artistic shot. To get shots, for example, of waterfowl on water, you have to get down low at eye level at the edge of the pond. And so it doesn't matter if that wildlife photographer that I see, you know, sitting around the park has a 600 millimeter f4 lens. It's not gonna make a difference if you don't get the right angles on it, if you don't get it in the right lighting. If you're not up at sunrise and you're missing golden hour, most of your shots are gonna be the same. You gotta get those, you gotta be willing to put in the extra work, get up early and do those things. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for supporting this channel. I would love to keep doing how-tos for you guys. I haven't gotten to do one yet because I figured since I'm gonna be upgrading cameras, I just wanted to get this Panasonic G9 out there. That way you guys know about this experience. And hopefully in the future, I'd love to review the Panasonic G9 side by side with the S1R. That way you guys can kind of see the differences for yourselves, the tangible differences of them. But let me know what you guys want to see in how-tos. I'm really excited. I have a lot of really cool ideas. I just haven't gotten to them yet because I'm busy. Hopefully this encourages you. If you're a Panasonic Micro Four Thirds user, keep doing it. You're doing great stuff. You have a good system. Just keep moving forward. And if you're debating getting into the wildlife field, Panasonic Micro Four Thirds system or Olympus Micro Four Thirds system, somewhere around there is the way to start. And if I were you, I would buy that Panasonic G9 if you're trying to get into wildlife photography, because you cannot get into wildlife photography with a better camera at such a price. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for subscribing below. And I hope to see you guys next time.